Hey, what is happening, everybody? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the fact that, obviously, as we know, the PlayStation 5, alongside of the Xbox Series X, just launched last week. We're in the next generation. It's very exciting. As you can see here, I myself own a PlayStation 5, which many of you guys know. And it's really exciting. It's a great console so far. I may or may not decide to make like a review video of the console or an impressions video. But even before I get to any of that, there is an element, an aspect of the console that has been a lot of fun, very widely talked about, and that's been impressing the heck out of me. And as you could tell from the beginning skit here, it's obviously the controller. And we know that the DualSense controller has a lot going on. Sony's been very big on kind of promoting and hyping up all the different features about it. And now that I've had it in my hands for a couple of days, I realized that it's very interesting when you compare that controller to the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, and I found it so impressive that I just had to talk about the differences today. Obviously, we know the big advantages and innovations with the DualSense controller for the PS5 is the fact that it features haptic feedback for its rumble, and then of course the adaptive triggers, right? Those are the big kind of advantages in newer editions. There's small things like the size and the shape, the overall ergonomics, just the look, the color, the lights around the touchpad and the touchpad itself, all of it being improved drastically over the DualShock 4. And I have to say, even without comparing it to any other console or the Switch or any of that stuff, just on its own merits, the DualSense controller, you guys, I find it to be fantastic. It is an absolute joy to play with. You know, whether you're talking about the haptic feedback features or just the how comfortable it is, the weight of it, the look, everything about it, I've absolutely loved. It's probably beyond, you know, Demon's Souls as a launch title. I would say the DualSense controller is my other favorite thing about playing my PS5 right now. Now, when we heard about the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers to the DualSense, a lot of us also started to think of the Nintendo Switch's Joy-Cons, which, as we know, also features something that they call HD Rumble, which was a very cool, very exciting feature that was first confirmed in the January 2017 Tokyo event for the Switch, where they finally detailed the console and the Joy-Con controllers, and they said, hey, we have this thing called HD Rumble, you can feel all these different things, and it's really cool. And then when the Switch launched, most of us played the game 1-2 Switch, which launched with the console, and that was an amazing showcase for the HD Rumble capabilities, and I, personally, and maybe a lot of other people, were extremely excited. I mean, I'll tell you guys, going into the launch of the Switch, that console, the HD Rumble was one of the most impressive and exciting things to me. I was really excited for the prospect of it based off of specifically the game 1-2 Switch, and I really wanted to believe that there was a bright future for this tech and that it was going to help make games on the Switch more immersive and also help convince me to want to play with the Joy-Con separately in my hands more often to fully appreciate what it could do, and it could really suck me into the game in a totally different way. And, you know, the disappointing thing that I think a lot of us know and would agree with is that honestly, you know, 3.5 years in, there really isn't a lot of games that are doing anything with HD Rumble. You get a lot of standard rumble. I mean, you know, your Joy-Cons will rumble and shake in any other standard way with the same way they do with any other game on any other console. Just kind of standard rumble. But HD Rumble is so different because you're supposed to be able to feel different things on different sides of the Joy-Con and the controllers and the variety of vibration intensities and things that it's supposed to be able to give you, supposed to be able to make you feel things like almost in a 3D space as you're just holding these controllers. It's more than just the whole thing shakes when it's supposed to shake. It's HD. It's very specific. And the tech is here. This is the thing. The technology is in here, but as we know, Nintendo hasn't really been using it, which is why when we come to the DualSense, you guys, and granted, this console has been out for 4 days. This controller has been in most of our hands for only 4 days, for those of us that have it. There's only a handful of games available at launch. But I gotta tell you, what this controller does in this HD Rumble haptic feedback, you know, adaptive triggers space, as far as this specific topic here, this absolutely blows this out of the water. Like, it's not even close, it's not even a competition, and I know many people may not really care about this, but I personally do just because it's so interesting, And I have to say, the DualSense is fantastic. And maybe it's because I'm, one of the people who has the controller and the console, and so I'm experiencing it. And this is also a really tough conversation to make a video about because everything I'm talking about is based on feel. You have to be holding and feeling these things in your hands in order to understand the real differences. If you don't have one or both of these controllers, it might be harder to imagine, and you just have to trust how people like me are talking about it, because you can't actually hold the controllers and play the games and feel the difference. But I am so impressed with this, it's making me want to make this 10 or 15 minute long video comparing these two, because, I'm disappointed, really, in the Joy-Cons and in the HD Rumble. And you guys know that, Nintendo's my favorite company. I remind you guys this. This isn't like so much of a fanboy perspective or trying to just crap on something just for the sake of crapping on it. I mean, I love the Switch. I absolutely love the Switch, and Nintendo's my favorite. But I have to be honest, man. They built some really awesome tech here. I mean, they went through the time and money and manpower to create the tech. So they went that far. They took that many steps in the right direction with this. But then they're not doing anything with it. It's like, what the heck, man? But then here comes Sony, and so far, they're doing a great job. Now, obviously, I have to do my best to try to give some kind of actual examples here of what I'm talking about, right? Because again, you can't feel what I'm talking about, you just have to hear me talk about it. So the reason the DualSense is impressing me so much, you guys, is because the haptic feedback and the way it creates, I guess what I can only call like a 3D feeling vibration, is so impressive, okay? So here are the games that I'm able to play on my PlayStation 5 right now. Demon's Souls, Call of Duty, Cold War, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and then, of course, Astro Bot's Playroom, which is the free game that comes downloaded on your PlayStation 5. So these are the 4 titles I've experienced over the weekend, and every single one of them is actually using the haptic feedback and the triggers in a unique and specific way, okay? Unlike the Switch, which launched with a couple of games, 1-2 Switch was the only title that really used the HD Rumble and made us feel like it was going to be amazing. Everything else around launch did nothing with HD Rumble, really. Maybe a couple of small things here and there, like with Fast Racing Neo. Or Fast Racing Remix, I should say. But that's it, and since then, again, it's been almost nothing. But right out of the gate with the PS5 and the DualSense, every single title of the 4 that I've played, which are all big AAA high-profile titles, they're actually using these features. Already, the DualSense 5's haptic feedback and triggers are making a difference in every single game of the 4 that I've played. Astro Bot's Playroom is a really important title for me to focus on here because I've been making this comparison to some friends and fellow people and stuff on the internet the past couple of days. Astro Bot's Playroom is the Nintendo, it's the Wii Sports or Nintendo Land of the PlayStation 5, right? Whereas Wii Sports came with the Nintendo Wii and was a great showcase of what this brand new Wii Remote motion technology was going to be capable of, Nintendo Land, effectively did the same thing for the Wii U and the gamepad. And, you can debate the merits of the gamepad as that went along. I liked the gamepad. I think there were enough games that did cool stuff with it, even though the Wii U was a failure. But what Nintendo Land did at the very beginning of the console was significant. It showed some amazing abilities of that gamepad, and it was a really exciting showcase and demo of that controller, just like Wii Sports. Astro Bot's Playroom, 100% the same thing for the PS5 and the DualSense controller. It's the same principle. And so the biggest thing I'm noticing with Astro Bot and plenty of other games is there are games that make use of the haptic feedback just when you're walking or running, okay? If your character is walking around, and Sony talked about this when they announced the DualSense, you can actually feel and hear from the speaker on the controller the difference of the texture of the surfaces you're walking on. So if you're walking on just straight ground, you're going to get these slight little bumps on each side of the controller as Astro is walking. But then when he walks on grass or on mud or on glass, like a glass domed thing in the center of the hub world, the sound changes coming out of the controller, and just, I don't know what to call it, the texture of the vibrations changes. And it's so effective. I mean, I almost don't even know what words to use here, you guys, because it is incredibly effective. The combination of the sound and the change in vibrations truly does make it feel like you're walking somewhere different. It makes you feel more like you're the character, in this case, Astro. and it's just obscenely impressive. And then you get into the adaptive triggers, and oh boy, let me tell you guys, these things, I was a little bit nervous about them when the first video I saw came out with somebody kind of using these triggers, but playing it in my hand, playing Astrobot specifically, holy freaking smokes. These triggers have the ability to create like almost like a click. It's almost like a digital sort of click. I mean, it can create a stopping point where you pull on the trigger and it's going to give you a slight little stop, and you have to pull it hard enough just to click it, like it's a button almost. And they can input that point of stoppage anywhere on the entire travel radius of the trigger, and the ability to create, you know, more of a squeezing feeling and more of a weight to the squeeze based on that. It's just insane. And obviously this technology has existed in other devices before, so maybe you've used it in something that isn't the DualSense, and that's fine. But using it on a video game controller this way with games that are using it as well as Astrobot does, it's incredible. If you're using the monkey thing, where you turn into a monkey and you're trying to swing and grab things, you turn the controller and you pull the clicks on each trigger as you go, it feels insane. I just can't describe how cool it feels. It's really just cool. I mean, it's fun, it's cool. If you can't tell, I'm very excited the way I'm talking about this, because it makes me excited to think of how fun it is to use these features. And there's a jumping feature that does the same thing, the way you pull and click. It's incredible. Now with Demon's Souls, I'll say I think of all the games I have, it's probably the one that's using this feeling the least, at least the features of the DualSense the least. It does mostly just, I guess for the most part, regular rumbles as certain things are happening. But there are moments where it makes things feel a little bit more unique and immersive. Spider-Man is kind of the same way, but Call of Duty is the other one that I think is worth talking about, because as you play that game, as you run and start and stop and slide, the haptic feedback comes into effect, and it makes you feel like you're actually doing something and actually moving, even though you're just sitting on your couch. And obviously the big thing for Call of Duty is the triggers, and the fact that the different weights of guns, you can feel them when you use your L2 trigger, and that adaptive triggers comes into play. The guns feel like they have different weights and different movement capabilities to them. And you also get the pull and the feel of a trigger on the R2 button, and they give you the little click, which makes it easier to pull off single burst fire shots if you want. And the whole thing creates an amazing package that just brings you into the experience more. And so I may or may not doing the best job of describing with my words how it feels to play video games with these things, but specifically Astrobot and Call of Duty really are showing me that this thing is incredible. And again, you know, I can't think of the best examples with Spider-Man or Demon's Souls, but they are there. I mean, they are also using this to different effects when you're walking or swinging or taking damage or whatever, or there's a big boss pounding the ground around you, and all of these features come into effect here. And it's just, like I said, every game that I've played so far is already making good on the promise of this controller. Whereas the HD Rumble and the Joy-Cons, even though I like the Joy-Cons, the HD Rumble, it's nada. It's nothing. 1-2 Switch came out, blew our minds, and I haven't played Super Mario Party, or whatever the Mario Party is on the Switch. I think it's called Super Mario Party. I haven't played that game, and some people have told me that that takes use of HD Rumble, and if that's true, that's great. That's another title, right? We've got 2 titles. But with scant examples here and there throughout the last 3.5 years, very few games are using anything HD Rumble-wise. And, you know, I'll say what I said again, the technologies are similar. It's not that Nintendo didn't put in the work to create similar technology, it's that they're not making good on it, and so far Sony is. Now, obviously, the jury is still out how long Sony takes advantage of this. So there is still opportunity for Sony to drop the ball here, in my opinion, because for all we know, 3 months down the road, as new titles are coming out throughout the rest of, you know, in 2021 and 22, maybe games and developers in Sony also stop using these features. And they had a great example of launch titles that take advantage of the DualSense, but maybe after the big initial launch wave, maybe everyone gets lazy again, and the haptic feedback gets relegated to the same thing that the HD Rumble got relegated to, and maybe they stop using it. So if that happens, maybe I'll make a follow-up video in 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, to talk about the fact that eventually Sony dropped the ball. But to me, the big shining example difference is that every single game I've played at launch is using the controller features. Whereas with the Switch, only one title out of the gate took advantage of those features, which was really setting the precedence for what would follow, that most people would not care about it. And I think that Nintendo is missing a great opportunity to enhance the games on their console, and specifically their first-party developed games, by taking advantage of HD Rumble in every single title that they're making, and find ways, you know, whether you're throwing Cappy, or you're swinging the Master Sword, or my hope for Metroid Prime 4, you're blasting things, you're changing weapons, you're using your visor or your gunship or whatever we're going to do in Metroid, going into Morph Ball. HD Rumble can really take you into the experience and make you feel like you're in the game. And I can tell you that because haptic feedback is already doing that. So it's up to Nintendo to make good on it and catch up to what Sony is already doing. And on the flip side, it's up to Sony to not make the same mistakes that Nintendo has made. And please, don't forget about haptic feedback and those triggers in future titles, Sony. I want every game on the PS5 to make this thing awesome. So these are my thoughts and my comparisons and my quick sort of, I don't know, review battle, you can say, of the DualSense and the Joy-Cons, the haptic feedback versus the HD Rumble, and where I think Nintendo's dropped the ball and how so far Sony is showing me that they're doing it right. So I kind of believe that throughout most of the PS5's life, we're going to see the DualSense being taken advantage of by most developers, and that has me crazy excited. Maybe Nintendo comes back into the fold, maybe they're inspired by the DualSense's success to want to come back to take advantage of HD Rumble, and maybe Metroid Prime 4 becomes a first title to kind of really do that, and I'm going to cross my fingers, but right now, only time will tell. But these are my thoughts. I'll be really curious to see if you guys even care about this. This video might not get many views. I don't know if people will really care so much about the controller battle as they will about the console battle. But if you've played with both the Joy-Cons and the DualSense, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear if you agree with my overall kind of perception here, or if you think I'm way off base, or maybe you just don't care, or maybe, who knows. Whatever you think, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.